Hello and welcome to the Football Malarkey podcast. I am Simon Doyle. It's February 19th and today I'm going to go over some of the European games that happened this week. It's a bit of a European review. Haven't done this kind of review yet, mostly being focused on the Premier League. But European competition is back after the winter break between the group stages and the knockout phase. And there was 4 European Champions League games this week, as well as a full round of last 32 in the Europa League. So I'm going to go over the Champions League games and a few of the notable Europa League games as well. There's too many to go over. There's like 16. It's crazy. So starting with what I thought was the most exciting game of the round in the Champions League, which was Sevilla 2, Borussia Dortmund 3. Sevilla and Dortmund, I don't think either of these teams would be considered favourites to even reach the final, let alone win the Champions League. But I think they're certainly two of the most exciting and dynamic teams to watch in the competition. They are two teams that can beat any team on their day. They both play very fast and exciting style of football, with a lot of young players in both teams, a lot of impressive young players in both teams who I think a lot of big clubs have their eyes on. And going into this game, I tipped Sevilla to win. I thought Sevilla were going to be the stronger team. Dortmund have not been impressive. I've watched a good few of their Bundesliga games of late, and they just don't look like a cohesive unit at the moment. They are a young side. They're missing their most experienced midfielder in Axel Witsel, who had a pretty serious injury. I think might be out for the whole season. Thomas Delaney was also missing for this game, another experienced midfielder that they have. So I thought, given their lack of form and their youthfulness, the inexperience in there that's likely to be in their starting 11, I thought Sevilla would outplay them. And in the early stages of the game, I felt validated watching that because Sevilla took an early lead. They were the better team. They were dominating the ball and were pushing Dortmund back into their own half for the most part. But after that opening goal from Suso, for which there was a lot of suspect defending on Dortmund's end, I think Jadon Sancho and Mats Hummels both need to take a lot of blame for that goal. But it sparked Dortmund into life, and what emerged was the very, very exciting and very intense Dortmund side that we're used to seeing, and intense in transition, and they counterattacked like we know arguably only them and a handful of other clubs are able to do in world football. The usual suspects, Jadon Sancho, Erling Haaland, were absolutely superb, just rapid in the counter attack. The accuracy, the timing, the ferociousness, the aggressiveness that they counter attack with it's very exhilarating to watch, and you can see why those two are both big targets for Manchester United, as well as some other obviously major clubs. But given the style of football that Manchester United are playing, both of those players would fit seamlessly into the United team, and you can see why. I did find Sevilla's response a bit surprising, that they'd seem to crumble under the intensity and maybe the physical pressure that Dortmund could apply. I thought they would have a bit more nous to be able to control the game than they did. They seemed to crumble a bit quick when Dortmund raised the tempo. When Sevilla knocked United out of the Europa League in the semi-finals back in August, United were the better team, but I thought Sevilla mentally handled the pressure well, and they didn't collapse under United getting more chances. They looked to control the game and see out some negative periods and reassert themselves. And that's exactly what they did. Now you can say, having lost the 1-goal lead and gone 3-1 down and getting a goal back to make it 3-2, that they arguably did reassert themselves eventually, but the damage was done. To lose 3-2 at home in a European tie, it's hard to come back from. It's not beyond them to go to Dortmund and win and still go through. But to me, I think if I was among the Sevilla coaching staff or was one of their players, I would have serious doubts over being able to handle the Dortmund pressure again, the Dortmund intensity, if they bring it again in the even for just periods of the second game. They don't even have to do it for the whole game, because in this game they arguably only did it for 30 to 40 minutes and then dropped off again. But that was enough to score 3 goals and to create a couple of other big chances. Like I said, Haaland and Sancho were very impressive. Jude Bellingham, only 17 years old, looked like a 27-year-old in the middle of that Dortmund midfield. You can see why he was so coveted by so many big clubs as well. He looks like a generational talent. I hope it's not just a case that sometimes you see some players just mature very early, and it might not be that he necessarily has a greater talent. It's just that he's matured mentally and physically earlier than a lot of other players, and therefore looks ahead of his time, or looks like a more elite talent. I do see, obviously there is a lot more to his game than just his size and his maturity. He's an excellent footballer. He's technically superb. He's physically able to go box to box all game. He's an all-round player. He can do a bit of everything. So I'm not doubting his talent. I just hope that it isn't the case that he's going to get caught up by other people when they get to a mentally and physically mature level. But at the moment, he's arguably the standout midfielder if you're talking about teenage midfielders in world football. He's right up there in the conversation anyway. Another player who thought stood out for Dortmund, I'd never seen him play before, but the right back, Spanish right back, Mauro Bauza, I think his name is. I've forgotten his name now. I thought he was excellent. He looks like I looked him up. He came 2 years ago from Dortmund from the Barcelona academy, I believe, and I don't think he's played a whole lot of games in that time. And Thomas Meunier obviously is the number 1 Dortmund right back at the moment, but he came in and I thought he was superb in this game. He's very quick. He's quite aggressive both in the tackle and going forward. He can definitely contribute to the attack. So I think he's a bit more defensive minded than say Guerrero is in the left back position for Dortmund. But that's another serious young talent that they have on their hands, and it's just another piece of evidence of how good Dortmund's scouting system is. They seem to pull gems from all over world football, and I think it's not just that. It's not simply that their scouting department is better. I think the system they have set up in their club just allows these players a bit more time and opportunity to come through. I think players know when they go there that if they're talented, they will get played. I think that's why Jude Bellingham chose Dortmund over United. United have a great record of giving young players a chance as well, but it's not quite at the rate that Dortmund is, and that's because expectations are higher at United. So the fallout from not winning a game or not winning competitions is nowhere near as big at Dortmund as it is at United. So I think that's why young players choose to go to Dortmund. It's already a big club, but a big club that you're not expected to win trophies every year. So there is that chance for them to go right into the first team and develop, and that's why Sancho went there. I think that's why Haaland went there too. He didn't want to go anywhere where he might have to fight for his place, really. He thought, no, just put me in and make me the number 9 for the next 2-3 years, and then he'll likely move on to somewhere bigger as well. But No, the Dortmund system, I mean, I get a bit frustrated at times when they don't challenge Bayern Munich more for the league, but they are two completely different clubs in the way they model themselves. And to be frank, if Dortmund took a slightly different approach and did want to challenge Bayern more than they do currently, they might not be able to give as much time to these young players, and therefore the stream of young players choosing Dortmund over other clubs because they're sure of their opportunity might stop a bit, and then they might pay the price 4 or 5 years down the line. It depends. At some point too, though, what they do now has to be of benefit to them in the future. It has to be, the long-term aim surely has to be a bigger club and to win more trophies. Otherwise, why do it? So it's a fine balance that they have to strike. Right now, they have a seriously talented bunch of players. I don't think they're going to win the league this year. They've fallen off too much. And even though Bayern aren't as dominant as they have been in some more recent years, they're still top of the table, and it still looks like nobody can really touch them. And if it is, it doesn't look like Dortmund. It looks more likely to be Leipzig or even Bayer Leverkusen. So it's maybe with Marco Rose coming in. The announcement came that Marco Rose, the Borussia Mönchengladbach manager, is going to be moving across to Dortmund in the summer. He is a very, very talented young German manager. He also has a very well-known assistant in René Maric, and that might give Dortmund the platform with the team that they currently have, if they can add one or two of the right players with Marco Rose in charge. It might give them the platform to next season really go and challenge and establish themselves as the best team in Germany. It's possible. It's going to be very hard. Bayern are likely to make a couple of big signings this summer. I think Deo Upamecano already looks like he's going to Bayern for certain. And they might make, I'm sure they'll make one or two others. So it's not going to be easy. As well as that, Dortmund look like they might have to sell one or two of their bigger assets because financially they haven't coped well, obviously, without having the income of fans in the stadium. That is a big source of income for them at Dortmund. They have a pretty big stadium. I'm pretty sure it can hold somewhere around 60,000. And the German clubs don't get as much money from TV rights as, say, Premier League clubs do, or even La Liga clubs. So they do rely a bit more on that match day income, and obviously they haven't got that for over a year now, pretty much. So, or almost a year. So they might. It looks like Jadon Sancho to Manchester United might finally go through. As a United fan, I'd be absolutely delighted with Jadon Sancho. I know he played on the left against Sevilla, and in most games I've watched of Dortmund over the last few months, he's played on the left, but I think he would fit in perfectly on our right hand side. He's played a large amount of games on the right hand side for Dortmund as well in his time there, and I think he would fit in seamlessly at United there. For a 21-year-old, his output in terms of goals and assists is outrageous, and on top of that, he has the perfect profile, I think, to fit in this Ole Gunnar Solskjaer team. If we need him to get him behind the back four, he has the pace and the technique to do that, to get on the end of long balls over the top or through. But he's also more than capable of receiving the ball in front of the opposition back four and creating from that deeper position. He's much more of a playmaking winger than, let's say, Marcus Rashford, who's more of an inside striker. He's simply looking to get in behind, get into opportunities to score. Whereas Jadon Sancho can do that, but he also has the creative element in his game. He's a extremely good playmaker as well. So he's a very unique talent. I think I can see why United were holding out to get him and not waiting around for, to make an alternative signing, because I'm not sure there's anybody else who's going to be Um, anyone else is going to be near worth the money in comparison to Sancho. I think with Sancho, you're getting someone who's going to be one of the best players in the world over the next decade, possibly someone contending for a Ballon d'Or, for example. I don't really see any alternatives currently, any attainable alternatives anyway. There's one or two you could argue will be in that picture, but can United actually go out and get them is a different question. Sancho, I certainly think, is attainable. I'd also love if United got Erling Haaland. Who wouldn't want Erling Haaland in their team? He's just an absolute beast of a player, and the ferociousness which he just aggressively moves through defenses onto through balls, and when he's one-on-one with the goalkeeper, or if it's somewhere in between and it's a bit of a 50-50, which it kind of was for that second goal he got against Sevilla. He's just fearless, and he's like a freight train running through the box, and I don't think anybody wants to get in his way, which is a big advantage, as well as being just an incredibly like a elite finisher. He's a stone cold finisher in front of goal, and I think he's obviously an elite talent, but he's those attributes will stick around for over 10 years, because to just have the knack of finishing, and he's not going to get smaller with his size. His pace will fade eventually, he will slow down, but as he grows, if he can add a few more bows to his string, let's say like Harry Kane has, for example, or Harry Kane has developed an incredible passing range as well. If Erling Haaland can add something like that to his game in his later years, he's going to have an incredible career. But yeah, a big performance from Dortmund. Sevilla not out of it yet, but I think there was an under par performance from them in that game. They'll be wanting to write the record and show what they're all about in the reverse leg, and they're more than capable of winning it. But it doesn't look like they can handle Dortmund when Dortmund are at their most intense, and I'm sure they will bring that again. They might only have to do it for 20, 30, 40 minutes in the game to get a goal or two, and that might just be enough. But I think that second leg is going to be very intriguing. It's definitely the one of the 4 games that happen this week. When this game week comes back around for the reverse fixtures, that game is definitely the one I'm looking forward to the most. It was a very exciting game. On the same night, we had Porto and Juventus. Porto 2, Juve 1. Not really a surprise scoreline. I think a lot of people might look at that from afar and consider it a bit of a shock result, but Juve aren't what they used to be this year. They're trying to change. They tried to change with Maurizio Sarri. They're trying to change now with Pirlo to be a more attractive side to watch. The successful Juve teams we've known in the last decade, particularly under Max Allegri, were built on the not quite catenaccio, the old Italian defensive philosophy, but not far from it. Like, they were built on heavily on their defensive solidity with a very experienced defensive line. They played with that back three of Chiellini, Barzagli and Bonucci. Chiellini and Bonucci are still there. Chiellini doesn't play as much. Bonucci still does. Barzagli's long gone. Buffon is still there, but he's the backup goalkeeper, having gone to PSG and come back. But it was built off that back four, if you will, with the keeper and the 3 centre backs, just giving nothing away in defence, and then they would have the players to score on the counter attack, or from those defenders would often score from set pieces, etc. And they would grind out games. They would, in their own words, I think Chiellini once said this, they knew how to suffer in games, and they basically knew how to take on pressure and then basically keep clean sheets or only concede the odd goal here and there, and then score when they got the odd chance to do so. And that was very effective, but the Juve board, the Juve owners, wanted to change how they were perceived. They want to be a more attractive team. They want to look more like a Barcelona or a Real Madrid. I think their belief was that the only reason they were a bit behind those kind of clubs when it came to generating income was simply because of their style. Juventus are obviously one of the most well-known names in club football. They are probably the most famous Italian club. Milan might argue otherwise, but I think Juve want to put themselves in the same bracket as the Bayerns and Barcelonas, etc. And I think they think the only way to do that is to play a more attractive style of football. And I think that was part of why they brought Ronaldo over as well. Obviously, having Cristiano Ronaldo raises your profile a little bit more. And they've brought in Sarri. Weren't happy with him. Now they brought in Pirlo to have a more modern and possession-based approach in their style of play. Now, when you're transitioning from what they were to what they want to be, it's always going to be difficult. But doing so with a manager who's never been a manager before. Pirlo was literally brought in to be the U19s manager at Juve and got promoted a week later when they decided they didn't want Sarri there anymore. The expectations, even with the squad that they have, can't be too high. I mean, I don't know how they can expect Pirlo to just come in and be the next Pep Guardiola and that they're going to play this fabulous football and all of a sudden be the team that they want to be. It's always going to take time. Now, they might be willing to give Pirlo time. I don't know. But if that's the case, then having someone like Ronaldo there isn't much use because he's only here for the short term. He's what, 37 now? 36? Cristiano Ronaldo, if he's going to be in the team, which he kind of has to be given how much you're paying him, then how do you build this new look team with him in there? He's certainly not someone who's going to be willing to press like a younger player would. So if you're not pressing but you want to be a possession based team, does that work? I'm not so sure. Ronaldo has played best in his last couple of years at Real Madrid. He played best in a team that mostly looked to play on the counter attack. They could dominate possession at times, but they were more than happy when they came across a team like, say, Barcelona or Liverpool or Manchester City. They were more than happy to let them have the ball and play on the counter attack a bit more. And his link up with Benzema in that counter attack was superb, and that led Real Madrid to win what they did win. At Juve, I think the balance just seems off between the players that they have and the football that they want to play. To me, it's going to take a lot more time, and it's going to take more restructuring of that playing squad if they want to change. They've obviously committed to this kind of change. They've been doing it now for a couple of years, but I think they still have a long way to go. For me, I personally think that they're trying to set things up to bring Pep Guardiola in once he leaves Manchester City. Guardiola has, he's been known to want to test his football out in different countries, see what works where. Obviously, after being at Barcelona in Spain, he went to Bayern Munich in Germany. He won the league every year he was there. And then he came to Manchester City. If he wins the league this year, which it looks very, very likely, he's won it 3 out of 5 years. Looks like he has signed a new contract, so it looks like he won't be going anywhere this summer. I'm still not convinced that will be the case if they're to have another bad crash out of the Champions League. I'm not saying Manchester City will want to get rid of him. I don't think they will. I don't think they believe they can get someone in who's better. But maybe he might think it's time for him to move on. He famously said himself that after 3 or 4 years, he thinks a coach should move on because most of the players aren't going to play at the same intensity that you're demanding anymore, unless you can change the whole squad. Now, at Manchester City, he does have a lot of power. He does seem to be able to get rid of players and bring in players when he wants. But are they going to give him full reign, or does he even want the challenge of rebuilding that Manchester City team? Now, you could argue right now, the way they're playing, they don't need rebuilding, that they're fine. So either Pep's initial theory is wrong, or maybe he's found a different way of rejuvenating the squad. The squad isn't that much different from what he had 2 years ago. If you look at the starting 11, it's largely the same. Now, you could argue that, okay, some players were there, but they're getting more playing time now, which makes a difference, obviously. Like Gundogan is more heavily relied upon. Phil Foden's obviously made himself a starter now. Is that enough? Remains to be seen. I think the proof will be in how they do in European competition this year. If they fail again, particularly if they fail again at a hurdle that you don't expect them to fail at, which has been the case in all 4 years under Pep Guardiola. They went out to Monaco in his first season. They went out to an admittedly very good Liverpool team in their second, who went on to the final. But they were much better than Liverpool in the league that season, so they were favourites. Went out to Spurs the next season. Again, they were heavily favoured against that Spurs team. And went out to Lyon last season, back in August, which was arguably the biggest shock of all of them. So if that happens again, they play Gladbach next week. I don't expect them to lose the Gladbach, but given the track record I just went over, it wouldn't be the biggest shock if they did. But if they go out again to particularly to subpar opponents, I'm just not sure. I'm not convinced Pep Guardiola will feel that it's right or have the fight to go again after that disappointment. I'm not convinced. And I always thought that his next move would be to Italy. So getting back to Juve, I do think Juve are trying to set things up for him to come in. I think that's why they brought in Sarri and now Pirlo, to basically start the transition of changing to a more, like I said, possession-based team, a team that plays a bit more on the front foot than, particularly in Europe, than the Juve teams under Allegri did. So we will see. This game against, getting back to my original point, it didn't surprise me to see them lose this game to Porto. Porto can beat any team in Europe on their day. They've proven that before. They scored a goal at the start of each of the halves, so they kind of hit Juve while they were just waking up, kind of thing. But the first goal in particular was a bad goal for Juve to concede. They're playing around at the back, and they're being pressed. There was options to play out, so it was no problem. It wasn't a bad situation they found themselves in. But eventually Bentancur played a poor ball back to Szczesny, who had to kind of meet the ball 50-50 against the Porto striker, whose name I've forgotten, and he loses that battle, and it's a goal. It basically goes in right off the 50-50 tackle, and the commentators immediately pointed the finger to Szczesny. I don't understand why. It wasn't his fault at all. It was a hospital pass from Bentancur. If you look at the angle of the replay, where from behind Bentancur, you can see that he doesn't really check his left shoulder. He doesn't realise that the Porto striker is there, and when he plays that loose ball, he doesn't realise he's putting his goalkeeper in a 50-50 situation, and that's what caused the first goal. I like Bentancur. He's a very good player. Just an uncharacteristic mistake in the first few minutes of the game, and then it was 1-0 at half time. Porto came out strong again in the first. I think it was within the first minute of the second half. Musa Marega got a good goal again. Juve just looked a little bit asleep. Porto looked intense and up for it, and they punished them. It was a good near post finish from Marega. But Juve clawed their way back a bit. Chiesa got a goal back for them. It was a good finish as well. Controlled right foot finish across to the far side of the net after a cross from, I believe it was Alexandro from the left hand side. And then in the last minute, so going back to more VAR controversy, again this one in the Champions League of course this time rather than the Premier League, but another very contentious decision where Cristiano Ronaldo clearly gets taken down. The ball is played into the box. He has a superb first touch to flick it back behind him, and he's trying to put it onto his left foot for a shot, and the defender simply takes him out. No question about it. It's a 100% a foul. Referee doesn't give it. The VAR looks over it, but I'm not even sure what the official decision was because the referee blows the full-time whistle. Now, earlier this season in the Premier League, we saw Manchester United, after the full-time whistle, still get a penalty because in the last action of the game, Neil Maupay handled the ball. So even though the ref had blown the full-time whistle, VAR was able to say, you have to go back to the most recent play because that should have been given as a penalty. And we did, went back, Bruno scores, and United won 3-2 after the full-time whistle. But clearly VAR is able to say, even though the full-time whistle is gone, in that last play, you gave a wrong decision or there was a decision you didn't give that should have been given. And therefore, why not? You can go back, take the penalty, and then blow the full-time whistle. I don't understand why it wasn't brought back. Did the VAR not give a penalty? If they didn't, it's an absolutely disgraceful decision because it was a clear penalty. If they did give the penalty and the referees just decided no, game's over anyway, then I think that's just incredibly bad refereeing. He's done the wrong thing there, and it's very suspect refereeing. I don't understand what the thinking was from the referee there at all. It's a clear penalty. I don't understand why it wasn't given. From what I saw, there was no official VAR call one way or the other. I think the referee just blew for full time and that was it. I might have missed it, but yeah, very contentious. I'm sure Juve were absolutely furious, and that could be the difference. I'm sure the second leg will be tight, but that could be the difference between Juve going through or going out. We will see. But you'd best believe, particularly if they go out just by the odd goal, there will be a lot of kicking and screaming about that decision for definite. Elsewhere, Liverpool went to Leipzig and won 2-0. RB Leipzig 0, Liverpool 2. It was a pretty intense game, back and forth. Teams that like to play in transition are well known for that. 0-0 at half time. From what I understand, Liverpool were edging things, and it took two bad mistakes from Leipzig to let Liverpool in to score both their goals. Salah getting on the end of one, Mane getting on the other end of the other. And it's funny, this is something that we saw in Leipzig when they came to Old Trafford as well, and United won 5-0. And 5-0 did flatter United a bit, but it was just incredible how easily they seem to make simple mistakes, Leipzig. They play a very high line, so it's high risk, and maybe it's simply that when they make a mistake, and against these top forwards, they get punished, it looks worse than it is. But I don't know, I can't help but think that there's a serious fragility in the way they play in their setup. Maybe it's because they're a young side, not a whole lot of experience there, and when you're playing with not a lot of experience at a very high risk strategy, maybe this is just the downfall of that approach. But yeah, certainly. I certainly think they collapse just a little too easily. It seems like once they concede one, their heads go down and they're done. If they can take the lead, they look a lot more confident and they look a lot more assertive, like they did against United in the reverse fixture. Can they do that when they go to Anfield? Liverpool have been better away from home than they have been at home in recent months. So there's still a chance for Leipzig if they can get the first goal, but nothing really about that game suggested that they can overturn a 2-0 defeat in the second leg. They didn't create a whole lot of chances to trouble Liverpool, really. I think Liverpool will feel fairly comfortable that they can replicate a performance that'll be good enough to see them through. It's also probably a nice break for Liverpool given their domestic troubles in recent times. European competition probably feels like a nice change of pace for them, and they might enjoy themselves a bit more in Europe this year than they do domestically. So we will see. Still a lot to play for, obviously, in that game. It's not done at 2-0, but I'd be shocked if at the moment if Leipzig overturned that. I think it would take a big turnaround. Not impossible, like I said. We have seen Liverpool collapse a bit in recent times. But I'm not really sure Leipzig have the goals in that team that they need to go to Anfield and win whatever 3-0, 3-1. Yeah, it doesn't look likely to me, but still all to play for. One tie that does look already done is Barcelona and PSG. Finished Barcelona 1, PSG 4 in the new camp. An absolutely horrendous night for Barcelona. The Barcelona that we knew under Pep Guardiola is well and truly gone now. I know there are still remnants of that team. Busquets, Piqué and Messi all played in this game. All started. Piqué, this is his first game back after a few months out with a serious injury. It looks like they rushed him back because they weren't confident at all in their backup options to play against Mbappe. Seems like they would have been better off playing their backup options because Piqué looked nowhere near fit. So that looked like a very, very bad decision in hindsight. Busquets as well. Did he look off the pace and outplayed? Yeah. Could you argue that about a lot of the Barcelona team? Yes, but they haven't properly replaced these players and they haven't properly moved on to find players who are willing to take up the mantle and the responsibility of playing in these positions for Barcelona. I thought Frankie de Jong was supposed to be the answer to replacing Busquets. Then they brought in Pjanic this summer. Is Pjanic supposed to be that man? Pjanic didn't start this game. It seems like a lot of indecisiveness at Barcelona over the changing of the team, and I'm not fully understanding why. I think it's been quite obvious for quite a while that a lot of these players need replacing. It's easier said than done. I think they're all on particularly huge contracts at Barcelona, so moving them on to another club is not easy. Should those contracts have been handed out in the first place? Probably not. The mismanagement under their previous president Bartomeu was clearly just incredibly poor. Left them in a really bad situation. I read a good article this morning on The Athletic about where they are right now and what they have to, basically what they would have to do to overturn their current situation in terms of their squad. And it doesn't look like they're going to get out of that hole anytime soon. They've got just too many players there on massively bloated contracts who aren't performing anywhere near. They're not even performing to a level worth half of what they're paid at the moment. Too many big players that are very injury prone now as well. Samuel Umtiti being another one. And it doesn't look like they will have. They've got financial issues, so they can't just simply go into the transfer market to sort these issues out. Their academy is not really producing. the level of player that they were just a few years ago. So it's very uncertain times ahead for Barcelona. I was on a podcast about a year and a half ago, I want to say, the Total Football Analysis podcast, when I used to write for that website, and we spoke on that podcast about Barcelona at the time. They were under the previous manager before Setien, whose name I have forgotten. But it was a manager who played a particularly defensive style of play and relied on a 4-2-3-1 block with Messi playing as a number 10 behind Suarez. And we were talking about the problems that they had at the time, and the manager was offered a new contract, and I spoke about how the fans' unrest was probably, with that decision, was probably coming from a sense that they were losing the style that made them unique. They were basically like any other big club now who just played a fairly rudimentary game with some big stars in there. Obviously they still had Messi at his peak, and that kind of covered over a lot of issues, but the academy wasn't producing enough big players, and it seemed very uncertain where they were going, and that situation has only worsened in that time. That manager has since left. They brought in Quique Setien, which seemed like Setien is a very progressive coach who plays a very, very modern style of football, much closer to that of Guardiola than the previous managers was. And I think that was a bit of an attempt to try and wrestle things back the other direction and maybe take them back to what they used to be. But he was brought into a terrible situation. He wasn't given any time. He had all these problems that I just spoke about with big players not earning their wage. A lot of these players were getting injured as well fairly frequently. He was basically told he couldn't move on certain players that he probably wanted to move on. I'm surprised it took them as long as it did to move on Suarez, even though he's proven to play very, very well at Atletico Madrid at the moment. But for me, he was just waning at Barcelona. He was coasting a bit, it seemed to me. And it looked like he was maybe on his last legs. He's proven us wrong at Atletico Madrid in that respect, but that doesn't mean that they were wrong to get rid of him, because he wasn't producing that level of performance for Barcelona anymore. And I thought Griezmann was a replacement for Suarez, when it turns out he was just another expensive purchase that didn't really make any sense from Bartomeu, like Coutinho and arguably Dembele as well. There's been a few iffy signings from Barcelona in recent times. But all those problems have built up over the last 4 to 5 years, and they're all coming home to roost at once. And Barcelona, we won't see the Barcelona that we saw under Pep anytime soon. If they want to get back to those heights, it's going to be, I really believe it's going to be a 3 to 4, maybe 5 year rebuild for them, if they do it properly, which is a big if. So yeah, lots of problems ahead for Barcelona. They can maybe take a bit of solace in that Real Madrid aren't doing that much better than them at the moment overall. They've also got some money issues. This is the third transfer window this previous January where they haven't bought any player. I think that's largely down to the money that they're spending on their stadium rebuild. But they have rebuilding issues as well to deal with. I don't think they're quite as extensive as Barcelona's, and I don't think they have the money issues near to the same extent that Barcelona have. But they're certainly in a period of transition. They're still able to put out that midfield of Casemiro, Kroos and Modric, and while they're all still very good players, it baffles me how they haven't transitioned into a more youthful midfield yet. You could say something very similar about their back four. Their best back four is arguably still Varane, Ramos, Marcelo, and Carvajal. How that's the case, I don't know. They have tried to replace some players in the back four. I think Mendy probably has asserted himself as probably the number one left back now, but that's still up for debate. And the squad needs some desperate refreshing. But they're not near in the same kind of trouble as Barcelona are. So for Barcelona, like I said, that might give them some solace that Real Madrid are in a slightly similar position. But for me personally, I'd love to see over the next few years just a much more open La Liga. From a neutral point of view, Atletico Madrid, I hope, win the league this season. It looks like they will. Sevilla, the way they're going at the moment and the way they operate, can take advantage of that as well and could compete with Atletico Madrid. Maybe not this season, but in future seasons, if Real Madrid and Barcelona don't overturn these issues quickly. They're probably the only two that can realistically compete. But we'll see. Hopefully it leads to a more open La Liga over the next few years. But I'm sure it won't be too long before either Real Madrid or Barcelona or both reassert themselves. Like I said, I think Barcelona have a longer way to go than Real Madrid do. But we'll see what happens. Speaking of PSG though, they were superb in this game. Mbappe stole the show a bit with his hat-trick and he was electrifying. But the whole performance from PSG, the way they shut down Barcelona, the way they controlled midfield, it was an excellent tactical performance. They just did not give Barcelona the time and space to do what they wanted to do. They were very strong on set pieces, and it was a typical. I think it was you can see Pochettino's imprint being stamped on this team already a little bit. They played with an intensity and a cohesion that Pochettino's teams are known to play with, and they're a serious threat to challenge for the Champions League again this season. They played this game without Neymar, who is injured at the moment, and I can't help but feel that they might be better off without him in some of these games. I think the front three of Icardi, Mbappe and Moise Kean. Obviously Neymar, quality-wise, is better than all three, or at least equal to Mbappe, if not better. But I think he's a self-indulgent player, and I think when the team has him, when he's in the team focuses the play a lot around Neymar and tries to service him a lot. As opposed to when they had the front three that I mentioned, it's a bit more of a meritocracy, and it's not all aimed at one player, even though Mbappe would obviously be the obvious focal point in that front three. I still think he was utilised in a tactical role more than just the focal point. And yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see if and when Neymar comes back, what changes, because for me they looked a very, very solid unit with the team that they had in this game. So I think this one is already dead in the water. I think there's no way Barcelona are coming back from this. No remontada or whatever they call it this time around. I'm sure PSG will not only go through, but I'm quite certain they'll win the second leg in Paris as well. I can't see Barcelona really coming close, to be quite fair. So yeah, very good win for PSG. Barcelona is obviously a big feather in their cap. This isn't a good Barcelona team at the moment, so they will face tougher games ahead. Personally, I'd love to see PSG against Manchester City this year in a two-legged affair. I think that would be a very exciting tie. But we'll see what happens. But they are definitely looking very strong, PSG. So yeah, that was it for the Champions League games. The Europa League was back on Thursday. best competition in the world. Manchester United winning 4-0 away to Real Sociedad in what was a very, very impressive performance, to be quite honest. It was a better performance than, say, the 9-0 over Southampton. It was the best I've seen United play. I can't remember, I'm struggling to remember when. That was honestly the best performance United have put in quite a while. That we were very, very solid. We made chance after chance after chance and punished any openings or mistakes that Sevilla made, as well as restricting them to quite little. They did have 2 big chances early on, but that was only because of individual errors from a very sleepy looking Eric Bailly. I know he hasn't played in the last few games, but he looked completely off the pace and made 2 big errors, which directly led to Isaac running through on goal. Henderson made 1 save, and then the other one was he was well caught up by Harry Maguire, who put in a good tackle to save the situation. But other than that, Eric Bailly himself was very, very good, but United played very, very well. Bailly, James and Bruno all made the Europa League official team of the week as well. I thought I really do think our defence, those mistakes aside, looks a lot more solid when Bailly is beside Maguire. I heard Gary Neville say in his latest podcast that Maguire's problem is Lindelof and Lindelof's problem is Maguire, and I completely agree with him on that. They're not compatible. They don't form a good partnership. Individually, I think they're both good. I think Maguire is better than Lindelof, in my opinion. I think Lindelof's too soft for my liking, particularly in the Premier League. I thought that since he came in, as much as I like a lot of what he does and I wanted to be proven wrong, I don't think I have been. And I think for me, he just looks too soft. He's too mentally fragile, I think, and doesn't look up for the fight enough for a centre back. Certainly in the Premier League as well. Maguire is much better with the physical demands. Easy to say because he is bigger than Lindelof, but he just has more aggression and commits more to physical challenges than Lindelof does. Lindelof is bullied quite easily. And I just think, like I said, he's mentally fragile. He doesn't seem to handle the pressure very well. And I think Bailly looks a lot more carefree when he's in there. He looks like he belongs a bit more. He's definitely up for the physical challenge, no problem. But he just seems to shrug off problems better than Lindelof does. And his ability to cover with his pace and the way he reads the game suits Maguire better, but also I just think mentally he's up for the fight more than Lindelof is, and I think it's just more compatible with Maguire, who, like I said, I think is more up for the fight than Lindelof is. But you need 2 centre backs who are on that same mental wavelength, and I don't think Lindelof and Maguire are. I think Bailly and Maguire are a lot more compatible. Obviously, Bailly's issues are always injuries. He's injury prone. Do we need to bring someone else in who's of his profile? Yes, I think absolutely. We cannot risk going into next season thinking that Bailly will do, because he's proven over the last 4 years he's way too injury prone. I would love to be proven wrong. I would love to see Bailly play every game. It would be foolish to think that that's going to happen. Hopefully it does. Hopefully I am wrong. Hopefully his injury problems go away. I just think that's a 100-to-1 shot. So we need to get someone in of his profile. Still keep Bailly around, of course, as long as he wants to be a very strong squad option. But we can't build a defence with him in mind, unfortunately. In hindsight, he looks like a very good spot from... It was Mourinho who brought him in. I'm not sure how much of the scouting was Mourinho and how much was United's scouting setup, or what the mix was of both. But you have to give Mourinho credit for spotting his talent and bringing him in. He definitely was one of the most talented centre backs of his age. He's now in his mid-20s by I think he's 26. So talent-wise for defenders of that age, I think he's up there with any of them. But he's just had too many injury problems, which obviously they couldn't foresee when he was younger. But you have to give credit to the people who spotted that at the young age. It was a good signing in hindsight. In terms of his talent, injury problems couldn't be predicted. So United need to replace him with someone else. They're looking at Jules Koundé here at Sevilla. I'm very, very impressed by Jules Koundé. Not so much the other night against Dortmund, but that was more of a team issue. I don't think he made particularly any big mistakes that led to the goals. I don't think the fault lies solely with him on anything that happened in that Dortmund game. So he's still a very impressive player for me, and one of the bigger talents of his generation. I think he's 20 or 21 now, Jules Koundé. He's definitely one of the bigger talents of his generation. Another French centre-back. They seem to be churning out world-class centre-backs by the minute in France. So he could definitely be another one who emerges to be top class and a starter for France in the next few years. So I think he could be ideal. And again, he has a similar profile. He's very quick, reads the game extremely well, doesn't shirk a physical challenge, is quite good and calm on the ball, can move the ball out of defence, and has a decent ball progression from centre back. So I think he could be ideal. How much you're going to have to pay Sevilla to get him is another question. It's likely to be at least 60 million. So even in these the COVID times when the prices on average are going to come down, he's still likely to be. I'd be shocked if he went for anything less than 50 anyway. So, but going back to the game, Daniel James came back into the starting lineup for United and was very impressive. He did a superb job of shutting down the progression of Nacho Monreal from left back. Was vital to United's press and in stopping Sociedad from playing out, and was obviously utilised well on the counter-attack given his pace, and that's how he scored the fourth goal. But Real Sociedad, for me, they don't have a particularly quick back line, and yet they played a high line against Manchester United's front four of Greenwood, Fernandes, James and Rashford, and all four goals were passes hit through or over that high back line, which led to United running onto them and scoring. And it was just a criminal setup from Real Sociedad. And maybe that's what they tend to do when they want to play a possession-based game and therefore press up high, and therefore you need a high back line. Was it that their press just wasn't good enough, and therefore United had the time to pick out those passes forward? I don't know, but it seemed like a criminal way to set up against the United front four, who anyone who's watched a few United games will know that's what they try and do first and foremost. Do you have space in behind your back line? Yes, we're going to take advantage of it. So not the best approach, I don't think, from Real Sociedad. So 4-0 win away from home. That should be the end of the tie. All I would say is, even in these ties, and this might seem a bit silly given it's 4-0, but you can't go into the other leg and just think we can just play whatever team. I'm hearing a lot of United fans ask, start Diallo now in that game, etc., because they want to see some of these young players play. I understand. I want to see some of these young players play too, and hopefully one or two of them can start, but you still have to go with a solid team. You still have to go with a team that you think can win the game, because if you don't, Real Sociedad could easily make things edgy by getting an early goal. They get an early goal, and let's say it's 2-0 by half time, things will be very, very edgy. And United will all of a sudden retreat and be on the back foot, and the momentum will all be with Real Sociedad, and suddenly a 4-goal lead doesn't look like that much. So you can't just go into these games and play a complete reserve side and think, oh, whatever, we're going through either way. It's not FIFA. It's not that simple. So I would like to see Ahmad start. Maybe one other young player who we want to see get a debut or get some more minutes, but that would be it. The rest of the team has to be. I mean, you can rotate more. You can definitely start some of the more fringe players, but they have to be senior players who can get the job done. Like if Mata comes in, or if Tellez plays again, or even if Brandon Williams comes in, or Axel Tuanzebe, those kind of players. It can't be like I said, it can't be a complete under 23 side. That's not going to, even if you pick 3 or 4 of them, it's too much. You can pick 1, maybe 2. The rest of the side has to be solid and has to be set up to win the game, and from there you can keep it solid and pretty even, and maybe you draw, maybe you win by a goal, maybe you lose by a goal, then it's no big deal. But you certainly can't pick a whole youth team and expect to compete with Sociedad. And like I said, if they got an early goal or 2, the picture completely changes, and all of a sudden those young players are under a lot of pressure, and they will collapse a lot easier than the senior players would. So still a game to be played, but as long as United play a solid team in that second leg, it should be tie over. A few other notable results. Young Boys beating Bayer Leverkusen 4-3, which is quite a surprise. Young Boys from the Swiss League, obviously. Leicester could only get a 0-0 draw away to Slavia Prague. So a good result for Prague. Surprising from Leicester, but I didn't see the game myself. I don't know if how worthy of their draw Slavia Prague were. Leicester should overturn that in the second leg, you would think, but they've given themselves a chance, Slavia Prague. Milan could only get a 2-2 draw away to Red Star Belgrade, or Cervana Zvezda, I think it's pronounced. Good result, obviously, for Red Star, but Milan, you would think, will do the business in the second leg and go through. A 2-2 draw away from home is never a bad result. Red Star are a good team. They've been decent in the Champions League in recent times. I think they beat Liverpool, didn't they, a year or 2 ago in the group stage? But they're a good side. But Milan, given how they are this year, you would think will go through in the second leg. Spurs won 4-1 away from home against Wolfsburg, the Austrian Wolfsburg, not the German one. So that should be game done and dusted for Tottenham. They could arguably play complete under 23 side and still go through in that second leg. I know I just talked about the dangers of doing that for United, but that's because United are playing Real Sociedad, who are a very good team. Wolfsburg, not so much. Ajax overturned, going 1-0 down to away to Lille to win 2-1, which is a very good result. That's a very good tie, 2 very good teams. Lille top of Ligue 1 at the moment, I believe, and Ajax obviously the Dutch champions. Rangers got a good 4-3 win away to Antwerp, which is a good result. They're going well in Europe, Rangers, and obviously domestically as well. Gerrard seems to be doing a very good job there. Arsenal got a 1-1 draw away in Benfica, which is a good result for Arsenal. Benfica are still a very good side. It's a tough draw for Arsenal, to be fair, in the last 32. But yeah, that should be arguably the most intriguing fixture of the return legs. So lots to play for there between Arsenal and Benfica. It wouldn't be a disgrace for Arsenal to go out to Benfica by any means. Benfica are a good side, so that's going to be an intriguing second leg, I would say. The most intriguing tie, I would argue, of the return fixtures. So, lots to play for in the Europa League, last 32. All those return fixtures will be next week. 4 Champions League games coming up as well next week, which weren't played this week, I should say. So lots to look forward there as well. City playing Borussia Mönchengladbach, Atletico Madrid playing Chelsea, Bayern Munich are playing someone else who I can't remember. But yeah, all that coming our way next week. So European football coming back, and it's great to see because it's the highest level of football in the world, the Champions League. So, all right, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to wrap it up. Full fixture, Premier League fixture list this weekend. So I'll be back on Monday for a review, a look back at what happens over the weekend. The Merseyside derby is probably the biggest profile game coming up this weekend. Can Everton leapfrog Liverpool in the league? That would really be a changing of the tide in Merseyside if that were to happen. Give Everton a decent chance of finishing above Liverpool this year, which no one would have bet on at the start of the season. So, big game. I think it's at Anfield. It's at Anfield. I think they drew when they last played at Goodison Park, and obviously that's the game that Van Dijk got injured in. So, nothing to separate them in that game. I think there won't be much to separate them in this game either. I think we'll probably see a draw again. But if I was to pick one team to win, I might give it to Everton at the moment. Give them the edge. So we'll see what happens. Otherwise I will leave it there. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to leave a comment below, please do. And I'll get back to it. To agree or disagree with any of the things I've just said. But if you have watched, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much, and have a good weekend. Cheers.